Hello, friend. Welcome back to our tiny little corner in the podcast universe. This is the Caregiver Spirit. I'm your host, Maria Alejandra. You can call me MA. Take a breath. We're here together. How's your spirit today? But more importantly, do you know what day it is? Because I don't. One of the caregiver woes is it's often hard to zone in on what day it is, what month it is. It's all kind of becomes one big swirl. Thank you so much for coming back. As I said, it's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you today. I am taking a quick moment home while Jules is actually in the hospital. He's doing okay. He's a lot better than he was yesterday. Yesterday morning we had a bit of a scare. And I had to call 911 and rush him to the ER. He spent the night in the ICU last night. We spent the night in the ICU, and he is now getting moved as we speak. As I record this, he's getting moved to step down, which is basically, in between ICU and a regular room. That's usually where patients with a ventilator, BiPAP machine will be, because they're in that floor. They have the RTs, the respiratory technicians that can help them. So that are more well-versed in trachs and all that jazz. So it was a bizarre moment yesterday because it came out of the blue. He was doing pretty well. So, it showed as extreme shortness of breathing, and his heart rate was going up significantly. So after, a few minutes of trying to bring him back to equilibrium, which we're usually able to do at home, I could tell that was a little bit more escalated. And he was starting to get a fever, which of course is like one of the first signs, once you're desatting, which is your O2 is going down. I'm checking his O2 constantly, and he's usually doing pretty well. And then I added external O2, which I do when we have moments like that. Again, yesterday was a little bit more extreme. Even with the supplemental O2, he was still desatting. So I called, paramedics came right away, and we were swept off in the ambulance to the ER. Not as scary as the situations we've had before pre-trach, because with the trach, you can manage the whole situation a lot better, and still scary. Also not as scary, I'll say, because, terrifying for Jules, and also I could tell that he was not as terrified, I'm going to say, from my perspective at least, because we've done this a few times. And one of the crabby things that a situation like this will teach you is how to handle emergencies like a mofo. And so, it's one of the weird silver linings, which sounds like a really strange thing to say when you're dealing with these constant fight or flight situations, is that your system really does become better equipped. And so saying we were in an ambulance and we went to the ER and he spent the night in ICU last night, I can say it a lot more calmer, because been there, done that, and not my first rodeo. And so your caregiver out there who's had these experiences, you can probably relate. Like I said, Jules is doing a lot better. After we got to the ER, he honestly had come back to more of himself in about 2 hours after arriving. They were able to, manage everything fairly quickly and start doing tests and things. And again, after a couple of hours, he looked at me and he said, "I feel a lot better." And I could tell, I could see right away, I can sort of sense where he's at. And grateful, and definitely we both felt like this is not going to be a really dire situation. Well, you'll come around quickly, and he did. And we still, I say we were able to stay in the ICU. There's just better round the clock care there, and we felt more comfortable staying that first night, particularly because we're dealing with the trach and stuff having to do with the respiratory system. It feels better to be in ICU the first night. And then now, like I said, we're moving him to step down. Hopefully he'll be in the hospital a night or two. It really depends right now on which antibiotics they're going to give him and how long the antibiotics have to be done through the IV versus being able to give him antibiotics to come back home. The goal is definitely to do as little time in the hospital as possible, because that will make him susceptible to other things. So it's a fine balance, but it was definitely necessary, and I'm really glad that we ended up going to the hospital when we did. Most likely we're dealing with a trach-related pneumonia, which sadly is just one of the things that we are going to deal with while he has the trach. The lack of movement and the trach both will, make him more, increase the chances of just a lot of fluid being deposited in his lungs, like not deposited, but like just lingering in his lungs. And so that in itself can then cause obviously bacteria and stuff. And so that can escalate into what happened yesterday when we started seeing the fever. And we just have to be very vigilant and manage it. And that's what we're doing. So send him all the good vibes. I am here spending a little bit of time with Skylar. We went out to get something to eat, just so, he's also has some connection. And he's with his grandparents, who are incredible. And, I thankfully, I'm so blessed that I don't have to worry about where he's going to stay, because his grandparents live right across from us in the neighborhood. And so he always has a really safe, wonderful place to go. Okay, now that I have yapped for 6 minutes about my situation, I want to hear about you. So the dog was barking and the cat was scratching, and I just had to go take him out and take a moment. So, here we are back. As I was saying, now that I'm done yapping about our situation for 6 minutes, and I say yapping, but also if you're a caregiver, I think it's so powerful to hear stories like that. I know it brings me a lot of peace to hear others that go through similar things and how they navigated, or not even how they navigated, but the fact that they are doing it and it's not just me. So hopefully that supports your caregiver heart and your caregiver spirit, to hear that you're not the only one going through really scary situations. And what I will say is that as we go along and we grow through this with all the really difficult situations that we have to go through, our bandwidth for dealing with things really does expand, is my belief. So what I thought we could do today is a bit of a check-in with our spirit. So see this as just sort of an experiment that you can try out as you're listening to this, as you're listening or watching. And it has to do with identifying how our spirit is doing. And again, I'm not going to ask a whole lot of us, because, we don't have a lot of time to dive into these things. And yet I do believe that when we actually ask ourselves these simple questions, we will illuminate a lot more of what's going on, and we'll take a moment to pause and really check in with, how is our spirit doing? And in this realm of caregiving and being stretched so thin, we're often either in a space of inner avoidance, because it's painful, because there's a lot of things that we may not want to do, quite frankly, and we'll do them, and we'll be committed to our person, and we will show up for them, and that's what we're doing. And yet it's a lot of things that we just may not want to do. We're going to do them, but we don't want to. So that's just the raw truth. So we're either in a state of sort of avoidance of feelings, avoidance of even looking around us and seeing the rest of the world kind of keep going. Though right now the rest of the world is like a scary place, but you know what I mean? Like life keeps lifing, and you see people living their lives in sort of, I'm going to use air quotes, normal scenarios. And sometimes we're in avoidance of that because it's also painful. We're in avoidance of grief, or in avoidance of a lot of things. Or we can be just either projecting into the future where we're like someplace else, like where things will be eventually, or worrying about them, or there's that sort of dwelling in that future space that hasn't yet materialized, that does not exist. Or we're kind of stuck in the back. I meant to say the past, but really we're stuck in the back. So we're stuck in the past, either reliving moments that will no longer be the same, or yearning for those moments in the past. And whether we're in the past or just kind of future tripping, then we're not really in the present moment. And if in the present moment we are in avoidance, in that classic like flight pattern, which is something that is completely normal because our emotional system and our parasympathetic nervous system are compromised all the time because we're constantly on alert. So when you're constantly on alert, your body and your system feels like just there's no safety. There's not an inherent safety because we're constantly paying attention to how our person is, and we're dealing with things that a lot of situations are life and death. We go through this often. And so what do we do to check in? There's lots of different things. There's lots of different things I've tried to bring myself back to center. Many of them work really well. I'll pepper them throughout as we go through our podcast journey here together. Today, and it was something I was reflecting on yesterday as I was walking through the hospital halls, and I thought to myself, okay, so how is my spirit doing? Because right when we got into the hospital, I felt like I was having this very, it's like this out-of-body experience, which you might relate to. Everything sort of like speeds up and slows down at the same time. The last time we were in the hospital, it was for a whole month. He got the trach midway through that month. We dealt with a lot of stuff. It was a very taxing time. It came after a few months that were really, really difficult for both of us. Jules has gone through a lot, and I'm always carrying not just the caregiver duties, but the pain and the grief. And witnessing my husband go through this is completely heart busting. It guts me every time. It just is so ridiculously, unbelievably, undescribably painful to see my husband go through this. And so that whole month had a lot going on. We thought at a certain point like he would no longer be here. So there were everything going on at the same time. And then we made it through that month. And then we made it through the first month here at home, where we still were dealing with some pneumonia issues. And he was like, we were dodging some things that were scary. And then we settled into a bit of a routine and a flow where we're now, we're continuing to get used to the situation, but moving forward. You can't be in the dwelling of getting used to it for too long, especially with ALS, because things move quickly. So I think both of us independently and together make this choice to, okay, kind of we process and then we go on to the next thing, because if not, you're dwelling again in this past state and you will miss out on anything that's happening in the present moment. So let's do this check-in exercise, which I was doing yesterday. And so I'm going to talk you through basically 3 layers or levels of how your spirit is doing. Imagine, if you will, I was thinking yesterday of like a candy, like, where you have the outer crust, and then you have maybe you go one layer deeper and it's the inner layer, and then you have the core. So imagine, if you will, maybe some of you are thinking about a Tootsie Roll Pop right now. I never liked Tootsie Rolls. If you did, awesome, but I was never a fan. But any candy that has 3 layers. Or imagine just, a ball, whatever. So first, let's take a breath together at whatever rate feels comfortable to you. I know that I'm here in this moment. I have the intention to help you hold the space, to help you hold your heart, to help you hold the pain you feel. I see you, I'm with you. I see your pain, I see your sorrow, and I see your light. And so I want you to think of that very first, thinnest layer of your spirit and how your spirit is doing. That will usually be the first word that pops up. If I ask, how's your spirit doing? Whatever blank you're filling right there, just stay with it. Just trust your instinct, trust your gut, Trust whatever comes up, okay? It'll look and sound different for everybody. That may also be the layer of spirit that you're showing other people, your sort of outer face. But chances are that that first layer, whatever word came up right off the bat, just go with that one. And now you're going to take a breath, and gently you're going to check in with that second layer, right? Like right below that outer thinner cross. This one is a little bit thicker, and go with whatever word or feeling in your body you can identify that connects with that layer. This may be the layer that you've been working on, perhaps, to show other people. This may be the layer that you feel most comfortable sharing with the world. So the first one is like this very instinctual, like visceral thing. And then the second one is maybe a little bit more like rehearsed. This feels like kind of the theater layer. The one that when people ask you, how are you? And how is your person that you're caring for? And how are your kids dealing with this? Or how are your, etc. But how are you? This is the layer that you've kind of rehearsed. Okay. And just breathing into those two moments of awareness and maybe how different they might be, if they feel different, how differently maybe they feel in your body. And then I'm going to take a breath together. In and out. And then you're going to tap into the core. This is truth. This core layer is more of your spiritual truth right now. And I will invite you to think beyond your caregiving duties, beyond what other people are, how they perceive you, what they ask you, what you think you have to say, how you think you have to behave and react to anybody around you, how you think you have to behave and react to yourself. This core holds a really powerful key of knowing and recognition and awareness. And if a word doesn't come up, which may be quite possible, again, check in with a feeling anywhere in your body. Perhaps you're even sensing a color, kind of a frequency. This is part of the practice of checking in with our intuition. And if you're new to this whole talk, welcome to the best inner party, because your intuition will always be your superpower and truly, truly will connect you to your inner self more than anything else. And so that might feel like let's call it uncharted terrain. Well, through these practices, we can actually create a really beautiful map. And think of intuition as a map that's not like fully laid out for you, but that each next step illuminates for you, reveals itself for you. So if you're looking at a blank map, which is what often these experiences feel like, and you can't really like sink into the present moment because your whole system is being hijacked by all of the reactionary things that have to happen when you're caring for someone, and the fact that you feel so depleted. But I will invite you to even tell yourself, I am not too depleted to check in with myself. Even if that doesn't feel quite true right now, and even if it triggers you or it pisses you off a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, great. Even better, because that feeling of anger is one of the golden like signs or flags waving itself in front of you that says, keep digging there. So take a breath and remind yourself, I am actually not too tired. I'm not too depleted to check in with myself. And it can take a second. This doesn't mean you have to sit in meditation for 20 minutes, although awesome. We can do that someday too together. This doesn't mean that you have to escape your reality. You're actually just like checking in and dwelling in with yourself. So just kind of play with that. Get curious about it. There's no right or wrong here. There's just curiosity. Because I promise you that beyond the external circumstances that are causing this commotion and this chaos in your life, there is an inner core that is ever so steady and knows who they are. You know who you are. It's a matter of kind of sifting through all of the other waves and feelings and rubble of all this stuff that feels like it's just completely clouding, taking over your life, has destroyed your life. It has not. The circumstances can be beyond challenging. I don't even want you to feel like you have to explain or define the circumstances you're living in. We shouldn't have to even do that. I think part of the issue is that we feel somehow obligated to explain it. No, it sucks, and we don't have to compare it with anybody. What's yours to feel is yours to feel. And here is where we get to put on, I'm going to use one of my favorite phrases to just bring me back to center, is put on my big girl panties on, or the big boy briefs on, or whatever whatever that phrase can mean to you. Or not, you're not wearing underwear, which is great too. Go commando, like you do you. Whatever that means for you, we get into that place with gentleness, not with judgment, not with shoulds, but just a gentle curiosity that says, if I were to become the author of my caregiver story rather than the victim, what could that do for me? And being the author of your caregiver story does not inherently mean that you need to or are responsible for changing the circumstances of what you're living. Those may be completely out of your control, except for a number of things that we are doing to help our person and help our life and help our, but because we often forget ourselves, we can get caught in that external story that then makes us the victim of the story. And I use this word, it's like a very careful terrain to tread, right? Because in a lot of ways, we are victims to this thing that's happened. We didn't want it. Needless to say, our person didn't want it. But again, looking from the caregiver's perspective, we didn't want it. It caught us by surprise. Even if we are choosing into it, which I also believe is like a thing, we actually get to choose into it, is it takes over. So what would it look like? And one of the core ingredients that you might find will actually help you with this is what you tapped into in that very inner core. That really answers this question of who are you really underneath? And I'm coming up with something else here, which is it could be what you might find sort of comes up right away is, oh, who was I before? That's not the answer either. We're not going to who you were before. You're in the midst of transforming, like the diamond in the coal mine, like the little piece of sand that gets trapped inside the oyster, and then because the oyster is protecting himself, then the pearl is formed. All of these cliche metaphors like are true because they speak to our soul in a way. They're symbols. And so going back to, how I was before, of course we can think about that and let's grieve it and let's process it. I'm not saying just like forget about it, but the truth of who you are becoming and who you will be as you keep traversing this really challenging path is not about who you were. It's about who you are right now and who you are becoming. And that is, again, the ingredients for that. Maybe one of the ingredients for that awareness is in that very center of that core. So I invite you to just play with that over the next few days and see what comes up for you. Whenever you have a moment, take a breath. Just take a breath. One simple, a little bit deeper than the rest that you take, because when our parasympathetic nervous system is constantly compromised, our breathing will become very shallow and we don't even realize it. So even if you were to just pause and find a mundane trigger around in your life, that will help you get there. You're going to go wash your hands. You're going to, open the door in your car. You grab your house keys. You put your retainer on at night because you grind your teeth. Welcome to the party. Or not retainer, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, retainer. Grind your teeth club, like, table of many. Any one of those moments could be an opportunity for you to just pause, take a breath, and let that be a moment that is just for you. Just for you. Play around with that this week and play around with those layers of spirit. How is my spirit feeling? And we'll keep discovering more as we go. And whatever stood out for you from this episode in particular, I'd love to hear about it. And I wish you well, and I send you a hug from this tired, doesn't even know what day it is. I know it's Sunday, but it doesn't feel like Sunday. And I'll be wrapping this up now and getting into some comfy clothes and going back to see my hubby, who I miss, and onward we go. Onward with as much courage and love, and let's pepper in some humor. So I see you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Be well, my friends. Big hug. Bye.